Hi again. Someone has requested a tutorial again on perspectives. So again, this time rather than interiors, you would like to know about exteriors. And the rules are pretty simple, to be honest. If you've got 2 points, wherever those 2 points are on the horizon line, then from there they have lines that array out. Again, this is basic stuff. If you're looking to be a designer of any form or an artist, you really should understand this. So whatever they are, spaced, all merging at the same point, and then you can use, you can do any view. It doesn't matter what view you do. You can play around with this distance between the two. You don't necessarily have to have them on the same horizon line. Like if I just do those 2 lines there, and then I do 2 lines like that, they're not going to both be at the same point on the horizon line at all. So, I mean, these ones would end up about here somewhere. These ones would be well off the screen. So, as long as each direction meets at one point, and it's pretty basic, pretty straightforward, it's easy to grasp. Evenly spread the lines out, and yeah, there's nothing more else to explain on it really. It's pretty simple. So they're all going in that direction. And then just use these lines. I mean, you can just make a few lines up to get a different view. You don't necessarily have to do the same view all the time. And if you're doing it, something that's got a curve on it. So if the curve starts and ends in the middle of those 2 lines, the centre of the curve is going to hit this tangent to that line, i.e. the front of a car, for example. The centre point of the curve is going to be hit smack bang in between those 2 lines. Then if you're doing ellipses, same as the previous tutorials, 90 degrees to the axles is the widest point of the ellipse, and then the distance of the ellipse that way. Just do it until it looks right. So then you can just start to sketch in some forms, just following the simple basics. Now notice this line and these lines are equally spaced, pointing towards the point of origin. Centre line is going to be doing this. This is basic stuff. I feel like I keep repeating myself, but it's absolutely basic stuff. And then again with things like windscreens, it's really simple. It's really basic stuff. If you're getting your things wrong, there's no excuses. Because even if you were to sketch a car, a product, anything, without using the perspective lines, there's no reason why you can't go over those sketches with perspective lines or a ruler, or overlay something else on top of them, or tracer paper, anything, to check the sketch that you've just done. So if you're doing sketches and they're not in perspective and they're not correct, there is absolutely no excuse. The rules are always the same, they never change, and it's pretty basic. All you have to do is check your points. Just go through the whole thing, like I said in the previous tutorial. You just go through all your points that need to be symmetrical and make sure they follow the lines of perspective. Simple as that. And there's nothing more else to say on it really. I'll do a few examples of some sketches, but that is pretty much it. Like, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So if I do a series of sketches, different views, I tend to start off with 2 lines. As I draw cars, they're my axle lines, and then I decide on where the bottom of the car will be, i.e. the sill line. And for this one I'm going to say it's going to be doing that. So then the opposite side of the car, again, basics, let's say it's doing that. So there's my perspective setup. Now if I just sketch in a wheel, and I literally just do a doodle of spokes to show the wheel. Turn it off, what have I got on? And I tend to do that, just this quick sketch, but I always tend to do the top spoke. I mean, that's not 90 degrees, but you know, near enough that general direction. So the front ellipse is doing something along those lines, because it's 90 degrees to that. So these is the widest pointy wheel, and 90 degrees to the wheel, axle line, sorry. I'm just going to move this sketch down actually, because it's hovering in a weird place. So, although I've drawn that line there, which happens to run through the middle of the wheels, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be my sill line, although I said that at the beginning. You know, if need be, sketch a new sill line. As long as it follows the perspective, it's not an issue. And remember, cars aren't square. They may look like they're square, but if you actually study a car, you'll very rarely find a modern square car. So the front of the cars are more often not round, i.e. the centre of the car's there, but it bends towards the wheel arch, and the front corner of the car most often is about there. And then bear in mind the stance of the car as well. I see a lot of sketches where it's literally horizontal, and then no one's paid any attention to the distance between the top of the wheel arch and the C-pillar. This is basic stuff, it's proportions, unless you've got an actual crease in there, but some people draw the top of the bodywork there before, and then they start their window there, and then they've got no room to do anything surface wise, and then by the time they do try and follow perspective, the windscreen's in the wrong place because it's too low, because naturally the bonnet of whatever you're designing wants to go up, as in this is the lowest point of the bonnet, this is the highest point of the bonnet, so that it just looks weird. So when you're doing these, when you're constructing your sketches, bear in mind where the shoulder of the car is going to be in relation to the wheel arches. So more often than not, you've got to have some form of A-pillar. Well, you don't necessarily have to, but the shoulder of the car has got to be above the wheel arch to allow you to do any kind of formal sculpture in the wheel arch, and then to allow you to do whatever you want to do into the side of the bodywork. But this also gives you the room to then add your C-pillar. So if I just draw base of the windscreen, the base of the windscreen is always going to be above the highest point of the wheel. Physically that will happen. So bear that in mind when you do these lines here. Centre of my windscreen is doing something like so. So then this is the DLO, the daylight opening, and then that will run down into the boot of the car, or the trunk if you're American, and then you do whatever form you want to do in that back end. And looking at this proportionally, I'm thinking that the sill of the car needs to be slightly higher. So I'm going to go about there. And then this generally follows into the front wing of the car. So just bear in mind this distance here and what is actually going on here. And then bear in mind, if you've got an A-pillar, you've got the bodywork, you've got a distance here. I see a lot of sketches where the A-pillar ends in here and then this distance is about 3 feet in reality, because the A-pillar is in the wrong place. So you need to bear in mind where the A-pillar finishes, where the daylight opening begins, and then whatever distance you want to have. I mean, if you want to have something that's 2 feet wide, that's fair enough if that's what your intentions are. But you need to bear in mind where your door opening is going to be in relation to the front wheel arch, and then where the rear is, how wide the shoulder is on the rear, sorry. And then you've got to obviously allow for whatever, whether this is a 2-door or 3-door or 5-door, whatever it is. So these little points, I'm going to do these in red, just so it's obvious on the computer. These points and the distance between these points needs to be near enough correct, otherwise it'll throw the whole sketch out. And this proportion to this needs to be correct. I mean, obviously you can have a bit of rake in the side, and then you can have a bit of form or whatever, but nonetheless there's always going to be a dimension between whatever these are. So if you were to cross section this now, say if you were to slice it right this way, if you were to slice it with a wire that way, you would see the profile or the contour of the bodywork. Now if you imagine you draw a vertical line down, you're going to have whatever this distance is, whatever this distance is. So if I were to cross section that to make it a bit clearer for you guys, you don't want something that's 2-3 feet thick, because then by the time you put seats and an interior on there and you have the same on the other side, you're going to have a car that's about 3.5 meters wide. So you want to be aware of that. I haven't sorted out my hotkeys. Right. So again, if we just do another view, but this time I'm literally just going to sketch. Say this is a sedan or whatever, and say I'm going to do a Mercedes. And say I put the grille, that's the centre of the car. Okay, so my perspective at the minute currently is doing something along these lines. So all these points are going in this direction, and they're merging over here somewhere. And then say the seal line's doing that. So then the next line maybe is going to be something along those lines. So if this line here is my axle line, which is in between these two lines, a little bit low actually, that's a bit high. And I always generally put, well I try to anyway, I aim to have the centre line, the axle line to be the centre of the wheel. So let's say I'm going to put a couple of spokes in here just to rough out where the wheel's going to be. And then proportionally how many wheels am I going to put in there? I'm going to put 3 for the wheelbase. So the next wheel is going to be around here somewhere. And I mean I kind of know where I'm putting these just because I've been doing it for so long. But if I just throw in another perspective line for the axle, then 90 degrees to that line is going to be the ellipse. and 90 degrees is that lips. So then this is going to be a really low roof line. I'm just going to tidy this sketch up. I'm just going to remove all this stuff. So then I want some form of Mercedes form sculpture, sort of swooshy thing going on, what they've got going on at the minute. I'm just going to tidy up the bottom down here as well. So I kind of know where my perspective lines are going to be. And I'm just going to put the grilling, something along those lines. Then I know the base of my windscreen is going to be about here somewhere. A pillar is going to be in about here. C pillar generally is kind of where it ends the window, is generally just in front of the rear wheel, just so you've got enough. It allows you just to get a bit of headroom in for the rear passenger and your rear shoulder generally. I mean, that is pretty tight to me, because if I was to draw along perspective lines, that's pretty small. So just want to adjust that. Basically I just want to make the daylight opening a bit higher. So now when I put a bit of shoulder in there, whatever the shoulder's doing, I've still got room for my C pillar. So then I'm just throw in an A pillar into the C pillar. I'll generally just play around with this until something looks right. Just keep checking it. And then the way I've done the roof line doesn't match up with the front of the car. So I'm just going to raise the nose of the car. But also, as this car bends away, the centre point is the furthest point forward in this particular view. So I might just get a hint of what's going on that end, but basically the grille will just disappear, depending on how I intend it to go. The grille just doesn't look right like that. So I'm just going to add a slight rad to it. Just take that down and just keep checking it until it looks about right. Then there's going to be some form of pillar. Now the relationship between this is kind of a bad sketch. This is kind of a good example to know when to quit, really, because Mercedes make premium cars, and premium cars have a certain relationship between the centre of the wheel and where the base of the A pillar is. So if I drew a side profile, premium car, A pillar always points to the centre of the wheel. So then you end up with this distance here to the front door opening, shut line, and the front of the wheel arch. So your A pillar does that, and it gives you a longer bonnet. And then it gives you a more premium sort of feeling. And don't ask me why, but it just does. It just works. Which is all about automotive proportions and form. Now here you can see clearly the base of my A pillar, whatever this surfacing is doing, it's really uptight against that wheel arch. And that's the kind of thing you'll notice on things like Citroens, Peugeots and Fords, because they push their windscreen really far forward, and then it makes the bonnet smaller. And it's all about cabin space for those, but things like BMWs and Mercedes and Jaguars, it's all about premium, which is all about that. So that's kind of a bad example of a bad sketch. So let's ditch that, start again. There's no point continuing with it, because by the time you've redrawn it anyway, you might as well just redraw something new. So let's just try another view. And I'm going to do one looking down the length of the car. So to give you an idea as to where to place your everything's going on in the side of the car, where to place it in relation to whatever's happening in the front of the car. So I'm going to say centre line of the car is about here somewhere, which would make the final width about here. And again, just keep those lines going in the right direction. And same again, so this point is going to be about here somewhere. So if I say that is my axle line, and then that one's my axle line, I'm placing my wheel 90 degree about here. But because of the angle of the perspective, I'm not really going to see much of what's going on in that rear wheel. Front wheel is going to be something like so. Okay, 90 degree to the axle line. I'm going to have this pretty much the sill line here. And then I'm going to have a rising shoulder. So if this was a perfectly horizontal shoulder on the car, it would follow that perspective line. But I want my shoulder to rise above the rear wheel arch to give me something going on in here. So I'm going to put that in that direction. So in side view, that would be doing something like that. It wouldn't be a horizontal line on the car. Okay? Get rid of that. And I'm going to put my, say if this is a premium car like a BMW or Jag or whatever, I want that premium distance between the rear wheel, and then I want the centre of the wheel to point towards the base of the A-pillar and up through the pillar. So I'm going to say about here is where the daylight opening begins. This gives me plenty of room to do stuff in the rear shoulder into the C-pillar. Gives me the premium points between these two, and it gives me this distance of premium feeling of a car. But it also means that the point where the windscreen starts within your perspective line is going to be somewhere over here. So say the centre of those 2 points following perspective lines, I'm going to end up with the base of a windscreen that's doing something along those lines. And then you've got to get the daylight opening up and down within a certain distance, which means it makes it quite small and an unusual shape. But don't worry about it, because just use your perspective lines and you'll know it's right. So you've got to give yourself width and height above the rear shoulder. So I'll do that in red so you can see more clearly. So you've got that distance and that distance between these 2 points. Base of the A-pillar, wherever that is, front of the shoulder, into the front wing, down into the door, into the sill. This distance here, got to have something going on above the front wheel arch. So you kind of, you've got a series of points here. It's like kind of dot to dot in a way. You've got a basis to, where to put things, regardless of what shape you put into it. You kind of know where things are starting to go. The more you do this as well, the better you'll get at it. You'll start to draw things in a certain view, and the only way to do it is to practice. But if you follow these basic fundamental principles of perspective, you can construct any view at all. So don't be afraid of trying a new view, because if you just follow the simple rules, it will all make sense and it won't be an issue at all. So then following this line here, you start the bottom front corner of the car, and then always remember as well, the windscreen goes beneath the bonnet, so that will go down, and then the bonnet will start above the windscreen, and that's so that down in here you've got vents and whatnot, and then you've got all the spray jets, and then you've got the wind wipers and all that crap. So your bonnet will always be above that centre line of the window. And the reason why I tell you that is because you'll notice on any sketch that I've drawn a centre line. Centre line goes up the window, but it never actually meets the centre line of the bonnet. For obvious reasons, the centre line of the bonnet is above the centre line of the actual window. But then you're getting the idea now where it's. I'm getting the idea as to where the front of the grille is going to be, and then whatever is happening in the front of the car, and then whatever the shape is. Mercedes and BMWs at the minute have got like quite an upright front nose. So say if this is a Mercedes, it's got this nice big you kind of see where these will follow perspective lines to make sure that they look right. Then you've got an obvious arc here, somewhere to put in your headlight. Then obviously you just kind of copy that on that side. But bear in mind, top down, front of the car's doing this. So if he's looking top down on the car, this being the windscreen, top of the windscreen, front of the car isn't flat, never are anymore, because of the wonders of technology. Bends into the wheel arch, but you can see where that's come from now. It's quite clear. Base of the A-pillar got a crease that goes right to the actual tip of the grille. So I'm still going to have the above the wheel arch on that side, this crease here, whatever it might be. Current Mercedes trend, doing all this side surfacing, sculpting, throw a rear shoulder in there, so you can see what's going on there. It's pretty obvious. Then just throwing a bit of shape in the bottom. Play around with whatever the design is actually going to be, but once you've got the layout and the view sorted, it's easy and quick to just throw some shapes in and just see what you want to do. I mean, once you've got it sorted as well, you can always just use that as an underlay. So then you can get a new layer on top. And you know where your windscreen is going to be, roughly. You can play around with these. You can play around with whatever the form's going to be. And you can use it for different ones. So say you want to do that good old BMW brand. And you can just play around with it and just follow the basics, and you'll soon get there. Just got to understand what the basics are. But the same rules apply to interiors and exteriors, products, everything. It's all about checking your points, making sure everything that needs to be symmetrical is symmetrical. Just play around with it, really. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to spend too much time on this, so yeah, I hope that helps. I think this is going to be my third or even fourth tutorial on perspectives in there, so I'm going to park perspectives for a while because it's getting a bit silly. So I'll leave it at that. Cheers.